Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your new day. We do begin with breaking news because Ethiopian Airlines says that investigators have just recovered both black boxes, meaning the voice and data recorder, from the crash site to try to figure out what happened. Boeing faces a lot of safety questions this morning because this is the second crash in just 5 months involving their best-selling passenger jet. Some airlines are now grounding the 737 MAX 8 after Sunday's crash. All 157 people on board were killed, including 8 Americans.
Now the question is, will U.S. carriers follow suit? Major U.S. carriers use this new aircraft. Hundreds are in service, thousands are on order, and there are calls this morning to ground all of them. CNN is the only network live at the crash site in Ethiopia. Our David McKenzie joins us now with the breaking details and the efforts going on right behind you, David.
That's right, John. Good morning. Just a short time ago, we had those flight data recorders, the voice recorders, taken out of the impact crater behind me. They would have dug it out with one of these large diggers, and then they rushed it off the scene into a truck that was waiting to take that. That will be a critical moment because they might now get a sense of what exactly happened when this brand new Boeing 737-800 plowed into this hillside behind me, killing all of those passengers tragically on board. And there have been terrible scenes here. Red Cross officials have been gingerly taking private belongings of people, placing it in a corner, and you just see the impact. The plane was ripped apart. There are even bits and pieces sitting behind me that are only maybe an inch big, metal just torn apart. U.S. ambassador spoke to us just a short time ago. He said that investigators from America arriving tomorrow morning, Interpol, will be leading the grim task of identifying the bodies in conjunction with Ethiopian and Kenyan officials. But the question is, why?
Remarkable to see the efforts behind him this morning. That recovery effort, not only for closure for the families, but also key with this investigation. And Boeing, as David would note, Boeing has had issues with this aircraft before, put out a statement that says Boeing is deeply saddened to learn of the passing of the passengers and crew on Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, a 737 MAX 8 aircraft. They also say to the families and loved ones of the passengers and crew on board, they stand ready to support the Ethiopian Airlines team.
All right, we need to know much more about this. So joining us now is the former Inspector General at the U.S. Department of Transportation and CNN transportation analyst Mary Schiavo. Mary, nice to see you this morning. You've called this crash highly suspicious. What do you think happened from what you have heard?
Well, given the phase of flight where the plane was, the airspeed, at least the airspeed that's been indicated on various flight radar reporting sites, but of course it looks like the airspeed indicators were unreliable at the time, and the speed at which the plane experienced a difficulty, where it was, that they had a mechanical difficulty on board and were turning back, it looks very, very similar. And, of course, the same exact model of plane and 2 crashes of a brand new model of aircraft within 6 months. It's just unheard of. In history, what usually happens when you introduce a new airplane is you have hiccups, small hiccups, like the 787 had with the batteries, but you don't have 2 hull losses and fatalities like this with a new plane. The safety statistics are supposed to improve with new models, not deteriorate. So it's highly, highly troublesome.
And it's also very haunting when you remember the details of the Lion Air crash 5 months ago. Just explain to us in layman's terms. Basically, there was an automated system that the pilots on that flight couldn't override or didn't know that they could override manually. What went wrong there?
What went wrong on the Lion Air crash is they had a discrepancy in their instruments. In that case, it was something called the angle of attack indicator. That's, to put it in layman's terms, how your nose is pointed with regard to the horizon, up, down, to put it in simple terms. And when they had this discrepancy, they were starting to troubleshoot, but the plane itself, and this at that time was unknown to the pilots, the plane itself was trained or was computer programmed to put the nose down, and that was called MCAS, the system. And they did that because when they did the MAX 8, Boeing put on newer, heavier, more efficient engines, more thrust, and that changed what's called the center of gravity on the plane. And so they had to put this system in to put the nose down. They thought it was an additional measure for safety on the plane. but pilots said they did not know about it. So that was Lion Air. Here, it's very similar, except some things aren't lining up. For example, there wasn't this porpoising effect of the aircraft. As the Lion Air pilots fought the plane, the nose went up and down. Here, at the very end, the plane pitched up dramatically, looks like an aerodynamic stall, and then plunged into the earth. And there's an eyewitness report of smoke emanating from the plane. That didn't happen on Lion Air.
So now these two recorders, the two black boxes, have been found, the voice and the data. So when will we have answers about what happened?
Oh, as soon as the NTSB, the United States National Transportation Safety Board, is there. They have one of the best black box labs in the world. They have all the equipment to do this. As soon as they can get those black boxes, get them secured, make sure that the housing hasn't been breached and the data hasn't been lost. It was a very intense fire. You might recall the black boxes in the World Trade Center planes were destroyed in the fire. So they get that data unloaded. They will know from the cockpit voice recorder as soon as they hear it what was going on. And then the flight data recorder on this plane has approximately 1,000 parameters of data, different data feeds from the plane. They will know by the end of the week what happened, I think.
Okay, so since we'll have answers in a relatively short time, should American Airlines, United Airlines, Southwest Airlines, the carriers here that use the 737 MAX 8 or Boeing ground this airliner until that happens?
Well, I think they should, just as a matter of common sense. There are huge questions about this plane. They're already just, the websites are just exploding, telling passengers how to check to see if their plane is one of these planes and how to get off of them. So I think they need to get a handle on this, both the airlines and Boeing. And frankly, if I was at Boeing, I would step forward and do it. Because remember, if an airline or a manufacturer, if an operator takes the lead on, this would be literally a revoking of the airworthiness certificate. But if the manufacturer takes the lead and controls it, then they have more control about what happens to their certificate. Chances are it wouldn't get revoked and they'd have to reapply to the FAA. So by getting on top of it, they're way ahead. And, you know, it could turn out to be something entirely different, but with two mechanical problems. The pilots have already said they had a problem with the equipment. Boeing's on the hook either way. So they should get ahead of it and do it.
We will see if they take your suggestion today. Mary Schiavo, thank you very much for all of the expertise, as always.
You know, and if you're wondering, American, United, and Southwest all use this new aircraft. There are dozens of service in the United States at this moment, so it does have very real domestic implications.
I mean, as she's saying, people are already, as you can understand, on the websites trying to figure out if their next flight is one of these 737 MAX 8s.